Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Oystein. Buried Inside 4 off of Spoils of Failure. Final album from Ottawa's Best Boys playing angry post-metal. I have faith that one day you might review their Chronoclast album in its entirety. Alright, we're going to dive into this. Spoils of Failure is just 8 tracks. Each of the 8 tracks, their title is just the number of the track in Roman numerals. So we're looking at track 4. Let's dive in and see what Buried Inside has in store for us today. Digging the drum work. They're getting a lot of mileage out of this one guitar riff though. Interesting mix of the opening riff with the last one. So much tension right here. to hear the guitars splitting up here. So, this one tone here, that final guitar riff, sitting within one chord. The four notes don't really have a lot of functional theory behind them. What I hear is just an alarm. I hear four shrill tones that don't have a lot of movement to them. They're just a series of shrill tones. Very much like an alarm. I don't really get that elsewhere throughout the track. I thought it was interesting to wrap it up there. This song gets a lot of mileage out of guitar riffs, though. For 6 minutes, I think there's only 3 main riffs in here. We have our faster one at the beginning that jumps between higher and lower notes. I don't know, I have a tough time reading anything out of it. It starts off as a pretty cool riff. A minute and a half into the song, it's lost its luster for me. I was ready for something else long before then. What we get after that is chords with that bum 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 bum. That rhythm shows up everywhere in this track. We're introduced to it there at the second guitar riff. We get a lot of mileage out of this one too. We just play that rhythm with a shifting chord progression. We sort of bring the two together after that. I thought it was cool. We bring that rhythmic idea back, but we return back to the bouncing back and forth of higher and lower notes. And then after that, we just have a series of chord progressions based off of that one rhythm, and then we have the alarm sound at the end. For the most part, the bass and guitar, both guitars and the bass are all working together on what they're playing. If it's a chord, everyone's in on it. The bass is doing root tone stuff. It really isn't until the end when we hear a split where the right guitar is playing the more moving idea and the left guitar, I think, is just playing 16th note picking of a single root tone, which creates a texture more than anything else, honestly. It's something I wish we would have seen more of elsewhere in the track. The song ends up feeling very single-minded, very focused throughout, as much of the instrumentation is all working on a single idea. And I found it to be just a little underwhelming for me. However, I'm obviously not the target audience of this. If you enjoy this wall of sound, single focus, big riff style of playing, you probably quite enjoyed the atmosphere on this one. And honestly, the 6-minute runtime, it's not too long. So despite some sections being a bit long in the tooth for me personally, I never really felt like the song was too long at any time. And it seemed to end rather quickly. The vocals, man, this is an acquired taste area. I have not acquired the taste for these vocals. This is the same type of stuff that you hear in metalcore, I guess parts of hardcore punk, parts of metal for sure. Just having a vocalist that can do one style of harsh vocal at one pitch and then just run that for an entirety of a song. For a song that I feel doesn't have a lot going for it as far as the guitar riffage, bass work, there just isn't very many lead lines in this track. It desperately needs something above everything else that isn't texture, that isn't atmosphere. And the vocals, that's usually where that's going to come from, if not your lead guitarist. And since the lead guitarist had no ambition for going in that direction, it kind of landed on the vocals, and the vocals decided they didn't want to do it either. And so the song ends up being very atmospheric and texture without any sort of melody or lead element or anything that pulls me through the song. It makes every section feel highly static because it's just the foundation with nothing on top of it. Now, maybe if I could understand the words, maybe just being able to hear the story that's being told might be enough to pull me through it, but on a purely musical, sonic level, I found myself constantly wondering why we are in most of these places and where we are going from them, because the song just never decides to do anything in these situations and they never provide any sort of momentum or direction. We just end up changing at times to something else that's rather static. Again, if this is your cup of tea, fantastic. Maybe you found a new band that you really like. It's not for me, and I'm having a tough time pulling any sort of critical side out of any of this also. I am just 100% not the target audience for this type of music. However, there is something in here that I really enjoyed. I mentioned it early on in the reaction. The drum work in here is solid. I love how there is a lot of momentum to it. And I know we just got done talking about how there isn't anything that pulls the listener through the song. The drums do their best of it, but drums typically do not lead songs. It's a very tough way, or it's a very tough time for a drummer to be the leader of a band. They're usually the backbone of a band. Even if they're playing more melodic drumming, even if they're playing more complex drumming, they're still the rhythmic backbone. And the drummer here definitely leans more into that realm. I do think there are some nice flourishes. There's lots of cool tom work in here. I like the varying inflections across the phrasing as far as accent points go and kind of creating different pulses throughout the song in an attempt to keep things semi-fresh where everything else is content at doing just one thing exceptionally well. The drummer tries to keep things different and new, slightly new anyways. It's not like they ever bring in like a polka or a reggae beat or anything like that. Everything in here is definitely a bit more on the metalcore side of things, but it is a slight bit of complexity in an ocean of simplicity, and I value that highly. And it's little moments that the drummer decides to showcase in there that I quite enjoyed. Keep things interesting for me. And maybe the drums alone is what made the song feel not as long as it could have been. But I got to bring up the production. I think that the guitars sound great together. Their wall of sound is very singular, very monolithic, very wall of soundy. And when the guitars split at the end, I can hear both of them clearly. I can hear what they're doing, what they're attempting to do, and how that works together. I think all of that works well. There's some points at the beginning of the track where the bass is exceptionally clear. Can definitely make out what the bassist is doing. And the drums and vocals are both audible too. Despite being a bit more of a compressed sound, everything is audible. There is an element of clarity to it all that I appreciate. But there is one section that I just don't think works too well. Definitely going to be a subjective thing here. It's the production on the vocals. There's already a bit of natural compression in the harsh vocal technique that's coming through, but there's a second layer on top of that, and I wish I could tell you what the effect is. But it it's a lot of compression, sure, but then an additional element to it that makes it sound like this dude is screaming in a large cave. Not a lot of heavy reverb to it, but just enough to sort of muddy up what's going on the high end. A lot of the heavier bits of compression are removing any characteristic to the sound. It feels like they were recording this with a cheap $5 mic and tried their best to pretty it up as much as they could in post. That's probably not what happened. This is probably an expensive mic, and this is a very specific production technique they wanted to go for, but that's what it sounds like to me. It's missing a lot of the clarity. It's not quite as audible as I like. It's already a bit of a muddy delivery as far as pronunciation and enunciation of words, but then the production on top of it just muddies it up more and turns it into this highly compressed, kind of staticky white noise texture alongside the natural compression going on. and it just doesn't sound good. And then it gets stuffed into the mix a bit. And I don't know. I just was not a big fan of the vocal delivery and production at all on this. Um, and I'd love to hear Opeth's vocalist deliver some growls on top of this with that clean enunciation that I like. And I wonder if I would be more receptive to that, even though it would still be a static type of harsh vocal. I think this generally fits the overall vibe. The song itself is a bit raw around the edges. It's a bit rough. I guess rough around the edges is the proper term there. And the vocals being a bit raw kind of works with that, I suppose. But it was something I noticed at the beginning, and once I heard it, I couldn't unhear it. That production stuff was not great to my ears. So I know this is a bit of a downer here. I don't really have any overarching thoughts about this. It's an angry song that sounds angry to me. I mean, this is sort of my problem with more traditional styles of metal. I tried to get something out of the chord progression. There's an inkling of like a melancholy to that at times, but it's disguised so much under the timbre of the instrument that it's kind of hard to pull out. And then musically, it just, didn't really click with me much at all. And it's a rather simple track, too. It just feels like a lot of overbearing weights, which I guess is what post metal does well, right? So, I don't know. As much as this wasn't my cup of tea, I do think that they did a great job at exceeding on their intentions, succeeding at their intentions here, and creating something that feels angry and abrasive and heavy and singular. Let me check out some lyrics for this. We'll see what's going on there. Alright, y'all are gonna have to help me with this one. It's short, but powerful statement. What I can pick out of it, anyways. It says, sound the alarm, get an ambulance, ready a statement. For reactive critics, for the OCI, for the rest of the back end. In these moments to living history lined with the artifacts of threat, risk management is a precondition for every color of self-defeat. I really like that line right there. Risk management is a precondition for every color of self-defeat. If you're not willing to take risks, you've already lost. The most significant historical figures, events, any of that has all been about taking risks. The bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. We're so fixated on risk management today, though, we're not willing to take any leaps. We're not willing to strike it large. We're focused on things that have a fixed outcome. It says mandate piled on mandate, verdicts stacked high, dust covered and time worn, signed by solicitors general and bound by library services. A mounting legacy of heroic solutions and failed actions that can't be normalized and interpreted away. Used to placate all the lives shamed and denied. Custom is the greatest of weavers, devoid of useful memory and locked in fixed movements. I like that line too. Why do we do this? It's tradition, it's custom, it's what we do. No, not much thought put into it, it's just how things go. It says it's devoid of useful memory. We don't even know why we do it. We just do it. We're locked in fixed movements. He says, no small madness, confusing symptoms with cause, a convenience of definition. Condemnation narrowed to a point, better to drill it in, benign as a bullet, meanings are inseparable from purpose. We want to do something, and a definition is a means of doing it. If we want certain results, we must use certain definitions, but no definition has any authority apart from a purpose. I wish I had a stronger grasp on this. As much as the music sort of bounced off of me, I find myself drawn to these words. The fact that the song sounds as angry as it does, I think fits well with the lyrics here. I'm still not entirely on board with the delivery itself, but I think that the intention does match. And what I love is that this isn't just anger, right? When I think of anger, when I think of wrath, I think of a disposition towards action. But these words, they show caution. These are not the first things that were written when pen went to paper. This is something that went through several drafts. There is time taken on this. Sure, it still is anger. It is still angry, but it's not a gut reaction. Time was taken to ensure that these words were the words necessary. It is a very concise set of lyrics, but it doesn't lack bite because of that. Every word is jam-packed with meaning. Every word was chosen for a specific purpose. Several other synonyms could have been used, but they weren't. I don't know what this is talking about. Obviously, there's an element of being upset at a system that moves slowly and is more based in custom than critical thought. That the reason things are done in this system are because that's the way they've always been done, and there's no real reason beyond that. It is a condemnation of this system, but I don't know what system it is. I don't know, a third of these lines are supposed to be talking about. What are the mandates piled on upon mandates, these stacked high, dust covered and time worn, bound by library services? What does that mean? I don't know. But I find the words drilling their way into my mind. I don't think I'm going to be able to forget these for a while. Even if I don't understand them, the feelings that the words convey is powerful. If you have your own interpretation on these lyrics, let me know. If you want to read them for yourself, maybe you're a visual person, you got to head over to metalarchives.com. It's the only place I could find that had them. I would love to hear other people's interpretations, though. It's not a lot of lines, but it does go over my head a little bit. And it could just be that I'm missing the context for it. If I knew specifically what they were upset about, maybe that would help put some things into perspective. Regardless, that was a nice way to wrap this up. I quite enjoyed being surprised by the lyrics. These are my thoughts, though, on Buried in Sides 4. What are your thoughts, though? Do you have any opinions about this? Do you want to correct me on anything that I said? Add on to anything that I said? You have your own interpretation on this or your own thoughts about this track? Please put all of that and anything else you'd like to add into the comment section of this video. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.